Thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk on Atlanta News First Plus. As you can see, right beside me is a live picture right now from our First Alert chopper over the scene of a Decatur housing complex where we are seeing a large police activity. I'm going to take this full screen for you so you could see as an investigation is currently underway. What we can tell you right now is that this is along the Waldrop Cove. It's a housing complex area in Decatur. It has been roped off completely. You can see several units on scene conducting an investigation. There were several more law enforcement officers we saw at the top of this hour and shortly beforehand. Now, we are following to find out exactly what is happening here. There was alarm from nearby community residents as you see this influx of officers on scene. We're working to confirm some of the details of what exactly is going on. What we can tell you right now, taking you out here to the ground where we are waiting for a news conference to happen in the area of the Grady Hospital. So not a lot of details on whether this is connected to the scene we're following out of Decatur, but we have been told there will be a news conference in this area. Again, taking you back to First Alert Chopper, I'm actually going to try to put these side by side for you so you can see the different live pictures that we are following and police activity in both areas. Again, and apologies, I had to step away just to talk to our digital team for a moment. Again, all parts of the newsroom working at this. Here's a ground picture for you of Decatur, where you can see this is as close as we could get from the ground to this scene. Our Atlanta News First reporter, Yasmina Alston, working to learn more from some of the investigators that are in this area. We are also working to connect with the law enforcement units that have responded, as well as other ties to this incident. Right now, all that we know is there is a large police presence in this area. It's a Decatur housing complex on Waldrop Cove, and I'm actually going to try to pull up this map for you, this location, as we take a moment to take you back out to First Alert Chopper. Here you can see an aerial shot, probably the best perspective of what's going on here in this area. As you can see, several residents, I'm sure, impacted by this, waiting to find out as much as we are on what exactly is going on here. Here's a map that I was referencing earlier. This is kind of the community that you saw from First Alert Chopper and some of the businesses in the area. Again, taking you back out to First Alert Chopper, as you can see several. And we have confirmed an officer has been shot. At least one right now that we can tell you, again, tied to this investigation. Again, a large police presence at this Decatur housing complex where we just were able to confirm for you an officer has been shot. No updates right now on the condition of that officer or what led up to this shooting. A lot of questions still remaining unanswered, but as you can see, a large police presence, a large department response for this area, and now we can confirm and tell you that an officer has been shot. That officer, we imagine, being treated or attended to at this very moment while this investigation continues along Waldrop Cove in Decatur. It's a housing complex. There, again, moments ago, I just took you to a picture of a map. There's some businesses in the area, but it's a heavily residential space. And now the scene of an investigation involving an injured officer. Again, the condition of that officer, the extent of those injuries, not known at this time. What we can tell you is an officer has been shot, and we are still working to learn whether there have been other injuries and possibly any other officers that were involved in this. But at this very moment, one officer at least has been shot. We can report that to you. Again, just stepping away as information continues to come into our newsroom. We're working on all sides of this. We have our Atlanta News First newsroom talking to the officials involved in this, working to learn more about this officer and this shooting and whether there have been any other injuries. Right now, we want to tell you that this has been ongoing since about 11:30 this morning. An officer has been shot in connection to what you're seeing is this large police presence at a Decatur housing complex on Waldrop Cove. It's actually the Waldrop Cove apartment complex here. Our Atlanta News First reporter did see an ambulance pass on I-20 heading towards Grady. We don't know whether that is connected to this incident, but we do, however, know that there is expected to be a news conference held at Grady Hospital. Taking you out there actually right now, you can see a live picture, several DeKalb County police units right outside of the hospital, several more along Waldrop Cove apartment complex. I'm going to put these side by side for you so you can monitor both pictures together. But as you can see, this has prompted a heavy police response, a heavy investigation now underway at both the scene, which we recognize as Waldrop Cove apartment complex, where at least one officer has been shot. And we are following confirmation from sources that 2 officers have now been shot and transported to Grady Hospital. So again, just developing information into our newsroom. We actually update our lower third here so you can kind of follow along with us. 2 officers have been shot, we are told by our sources, and both have been taken to Grady Hospital at this time for treatment. We still don't know the conditions of these officers. To your left, you can see the ground shot that we have for you of Grady Hospital. Several DeKalb County police units on scene outside of the hospital, and then to your right, our first alert chopper kind of showing you the units lined up outside of this apartment complex, and you can see the perimeter established with that yellow tape from above, appearing to be a little bit more of a calm situation. You can see some of those officers standing just outside of the apartment complex. What do we imagine in conducting that investigation, but still a very large presence as this entire complex has been now taped off by crime scene tape. We imagine an investigation underway, but 2 officers. We can tell you from our sources. We've been told 2 officers have been shot and have been taken to Grady Hospital. Still working to learn what exactly led up to this. We did see moments ago on First Alert Chopper during our earlier noon hour. If you were with us on Atlanta News First News at noon, we saw what appeared to be a man being taken away. I'll play some of that video for you here that just came into our newsroom. As you can see, some of the activity that we were reporting earlier. Again, this is not live right now, but previous coverage for you. And you can see the scene similar to what we're seeing now, but a little bit of more movement. And you saw a man being taken in handcuffs, loaded into the back of this DeKalb County police vehicle. We have no clear confirmation whether that is the suspect, but we can see from First Alert Chopper that a man was handcuffed, placed into the back of a DeKalb County police vehicle right outside of the scene on Waldrop Cove, and several units, several officers surrounding that person. And again, you can see some armed units standing facing the wooded area of this apartment complex as this investigation continues on. Again, this is from earlier. I'm going to cycle back here so you can kind of see what the scene looked like at the top of the noon hour, where we saw officers walking with a man in handcuffs, escorting him into the back of a DeKalb County police vehicle. And you could see several units taking you back out live now. We appear to see an officer with a what I imagine is a police dog nearing this apartment complex. Again, we know that there is currently an active investigation in this area. Several units remain on scene. We see a mix of officers, some armed personnel, and now what appears to be a police dog that is also being escorted closer to this apartment complex. just updating my graphic for you there, as you can see the latest information into our newsroom. What we can tell you is officers were dispatched to reports of shots. An officer shot at about 11:30 this morning to the Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur. This is really a residential space. You have a couple businesses in the area, but mostly it's made up of several housing for residents, for livability. This became the scene of a massive police response, a heavy police response in the area. I'm going to bring the double box back, where we now have confirmed that 2 officers have been shot and taken to Grady Hospital. To your left-hand side is a picture, a ground shot of Grady Hospital, where you can see several DeKalb County police units, several officers standing right outside of this hospital. And then to your right, still the scene of Waldrop Cove apartment complex, where you can see yellow crime scene tape surrounding the perimeter of one of these buildings. Officers that are, and what appears to be a police dog, that are walking through the wooded area of that apartment complex. And it appears to be looking for something. Again, we don't have too many details, so I don't want to speculate. But what we can tell you is that there is an active investigation into this, and you can see that police dog now kind of working to identify something in the perimeter of this apartment complex as officers follow behind closely. Again, 2 police officers that were responding to this apartment complex have been shot. They are at Grady Hospital right now. We don't know the extent of their injuries, of course, but we do know that there's a large police presence consisting of DeKalb County police and other units right outside of the hospital. We also know that there's expected to be a news conference right outside of Grady Hospital as soon as we learn anything. Taking you live here, full to that first alert chopper shot, you can see several police units following behind what appears to be a canine officer that is kind of working his way or her way through the wooded area right next to this taped off apartment building. Still unclear on what they are looking for specifically, or whether this is part of the investigation, but again, you can see some of that activity as we see several units still on scene. Several others that are more outside of Grady Hospital. An investigation seems to be underway. If you were with us earlier here on Atlanta News First Plus, we took you through some of our earlier coverage where we showed you what appeared to be a man being loaded into a DeKalb County police vehicle. You can see in handcuffs, with several officers escorting the man into that vehicle. Unclear right now whether that is the suspect in question. We do know that that person was put into the vehicle. Still working to find out what exactly led up to this level of response that led to 2 officers being shot and now at Grady Hospital receiving treatment for those injuries. We are still working to find out really what the impact is at this very moment on residents that I'm sure have many questions in this area. Right now, what we can tell you, taking you back live, is we still see several units kind of combing through the perimeter of this apartment complex and seeing. It appears that they are looking for something as they are following behind a canine officer that is really trying to comb through the wooded area of this apartment complex, walking along the line of the yellow police tape that appears to be around the building, at least around the left-hand side of the building. First Alert chopper still over the scene of a Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur. Just to give you some perspective on where this is, it's really a residential area off, not along any main road, but you can see some businesses in the area. It's almost tucked away, but still several residents, I'm sure, impacted now by this heavy police presence. As we're working to learn what exactly led up to this scene here, I'm just going to pull up a live map for you so you can kind of see, while we take you back to First Alert chopper, where in Decatur this is. Again, not impacting any main traffic, but certainly a heavily residential area. And now officers appearing to focus their attention on the wooded area to the left of this apartment building of the Waldrop Cove apartment complex. Several units still on scene. We saw a canine officer. We saw several officers or authorities that appear to be heavily armed right now, patrolling the area as well. And earlier, we actually saw a man being taken into custody in handcuffs behind a with several law enforcement officials, DeKalb County police officers, escorting him. This is previous coverage that we brought to you at the top of the noon hour. There you can see him being escorted into that police vehicle in handcuffs. Unclear whether this is the actual suspect or whether this has connection to the two officers shot, but we do know at least one person now part of this investigation taken into custody by DeKalb County Police, and all attention right now on those officers. Taking you back out live, the two officers that we have been able to confirm have been shot while responding to this scene here and are now receiving treatment at Grady Hospital. We are waiting on a news conference out of Grady Hospital, hopefully where we can learn more about the conditions of the officers, what exactly led up to this shooting, and who that man was that was taken into custody, and where at what point we are in this investigation. But a lot more questions than answers right now. As you can see, several investigators still remaining on scene, kind of walking along that crime scene tape, the perimeter of this building that appears to be at the center of the investigation. And I'm just going to throw up these side-by-side shots. You can see this is our perspective from the ground, our Atlanta News First crew, getting you as close as possible to where we're following some of these community members walking around, officers. Clearly an investigation of some sort underway as we work to learn more about the officers who were shot at this apartment complex on Waldrop Cove in Decatur. Again, still early on in this investigation, units were called to here at 11:30 in response to officers being shot. So we can imagine it's still going to take some time to get any additional information. Typically with these things, we see officers will want to give out more detail as the investigation progresses, as they get more information. Right now it appears that they're searching for something in these bushes that are lining up this apartment building that has been taped off by crime scene tape. Still unclear on what exactly that is and whether that has any connection to the man that we saw taken into custody earlier, but less activity than what we saw at the top of the noon hour. Still a heavy amount of police on scene, but some of which has moved towards Grady Hospital, where those two officers are receiving treatment. And I do believe we're talking to a community member, so let's listen in.
Investigation is back off that way, or is it wooded area over there? Or
yes, it's woods back there, past the dumpsters. It's nothing but woods.
She might have some questions.
I'm sorry
for
for
you.
jumping in late. Yasmina with Atlanta News First. Do you at all know what happened?
No.
Did you see anything, hear anything?
No. It wasn't too long before we just left 15 minutes ago. So I'm not sure what happened between 15 minutes and now. We only went down the street.
Hearing that two officers were shot, what goes through your mind?
Craziness. I'm just trying to figure out why would they do that? What happened? Those are my questions. I'm not even able to get home. We stuck. So I'm confused on why, really. Why did this happen?
Have they told you anything about how long it might be?
That's the crazy thing about it. They haven't told us anything.
How long have you lived here?
We lived here for 5 years now.
Anything like this ever happened?
No. Shooting police officers? No, not at all.
And what's your name?
Brianna Mitchell.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I've seen them walk people, so you might say that if you say that you live here, they might walk you down. I've seen them kind of walking some people.
Just wanted to take you kind of into what is going on right now with this investigation. Our Atlanta News First reporter, Yasmina Alston, talking to some of the community members. And as you heard from that woman who lives in the area, they are not getting that much information at this time either. They have been told to kind of stand by, stay indoors as best as they can, and that there is an investigation going on, but not too much information as to what exactly happened. So a lot more questions than answers at this time. And I'm just updating this graphic for you all here with the latest information that we are getting. You can see some of those units have moved away from this complex. We see more now towards Grady Hospital. And I want to take you back to that side-by-side shot where you can see to my left our Atlanta News First crew taking you up close to where you can see armed investigators now with a K-9 officer kind of patrolling the perimeter of this building. They still, from what it looks like, appear to be canvassing the area, trying to find something, it seems. Crime scene investigators right now conducting an investigation after 2 officers were shot at the DeKalb County apartment complex. Again, all of this transpiring at 11:30 this morning when those that from dispatch, that call of officers shot came in, leading to this large, heavy police presence, and then our own team getting there to this apartment complex and talking to some of these residents who are still working to find out what exactly happened and what is going on, trying to get more information onto when all of these units will be cleared of their housing area and where they can go about their day. As we imagine, many have been asked to kind of keep a distance from this particular space. Again, you can still see several units on scene to the left. That ground shot, as close as we can possibly get you to some of what is going on. And again, we are going to continue to monitor this here on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus. For those of you who have just been joining us, this is breaking news live on Atlanta News First Plus. We've been following now confirmed an investigation after 2 officers have been shot at this apartment complex, Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur. This is a mostly residential area. It's not along any busy highway or interstate, but still you can see just from the apartments alone how many residents live here and really the extent of community impact that we're seeing. We are working to learn more about the man that we saw being taken into custody. I'm going to play that for you. Just note that this was from earlier in the noon hour, not live, but I want to take you to some of that where you can see 3 officers standing by a DeKalb County police vehicle loading a man wearing a white shirt inside, and it was really still a lot of questions on what that man's connection is to this investigation, to the 2 officers that have been shot. We do know that one person was taken into custody, loaded into this vehicle with their hands cuffed. Again, escorted by 3 DeKalb County police officers. We're still working to learn more about whether this is the suspect or what this man's connection is to the investigation. But taking you back out live now, as you can see, our Atlanta News First crew capturing some of the community members that are looking onto this and trying to find out as much as they can about what happened. Many, as we just heard from that woman, learning that officers have been shot in this area and kind of keeping a distance but looking on with curiosity and likely, we imagine, this concern. To the right, First Alert Chopper, you can see some of those units still on scene. Officers kind of canvassing the perimeter of this. We saw saw them looking into the wooded area with a canine officer. We saw them kind of looking through the bushes right to the left of this apartment building. And it seems to be that one building that is closed off right now. As you can see, another officer's extending that tape to the right-hand side of the building, making sure that they are able to establish a perimeter so that residents are keeping their distance and kind of going through the process of working to learn what led up to this and gather as much evidence and information tied to this investigation as they possibly can. Again, following some of these live pictures that we were able to bring you to the left, our Atlanta News First crew on the ground at the Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur, getting you as close as possible to some of what we're seeing, the investigation that is being conducted, and then to the right, First Alert Chopper, showing you really the aerial perspective of this area and getting you a better understanding of this neighborhood. This is in Panthersville in Decatur. Again, a mostly residential space, so you're not talking about any heavy traffic impact or any impact to many main roads, but still a concern for many residents and businesses in this area, as now we're seeing not only a heavy police presence when, understandably, when two officers are shot, you expect to see this type of response, but also now still working to learn when they can go back into their homes, if they are in the impacted building, when their community will be cleared of this influx of officers, and for their own community safety. I mean, you're talking about families, you're talking about children, and the concern that we see from some of these residents now. On your left, you could see looking onward and just trying to piece together what exactly is happening and what has led up to this. I'm sure word has gotten around by now that there have been officers that were shot at that far left DeKalb apartment building, but not a lot of information. As we spoke to one resident, said they're not getting a lot of information. They're learning just as much as they can from visual, seeing what's going on, but they're not getting any updates from officers. We are expecting to get an update during a news conference outside of Grady Hospital here in a moment, but we haven't been given an exact timeline. So really we're on standby to get you additional details. The big question that everybody has is with the concern of the injured officers and how they're doing. We do know that those officers were taken to Grady Hospital. We don't know the extent of their injuries, just that they had been shot. So again, a lot of questions that we will ask during that news conference and get you answers and recap for you. I am reading through all of your comments if you are joining us on YouTube Live, so keep those coming. And we are also talking with the investigators that are responding to the scene. All parts of our newsroom right now on this story are Atlanta News First reporters Yasmina Alston and Adam Murphy. We're on the ground kind of assessing the situation. We have Yasmina in Decatur and Adam outside of Grady Hospital, so we're working to get you more information from the ground. Also, our Atlanta News First newsroom here working to talk to some of these investigators and officials and see what we can learn on those sides, as well as the community members that are impacted by this the most.
Quite easy day today. You know you're gonna be riding that whole time. Yeah, that would be good for both of us. Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go shopping. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And I'm like, they might be nice to you.
Well, because they know 6 months. So like.
An important part of all this, we are bringing you live coverage on Atlanta News First Plus. Again, I'm stepping away to check in with our assignment desk, our reporters, and kind of get you any new information that we might get into our newsroom. But we are also bringing you live coverage on AtlantaNewsFirst.com. If you wanted to read through the live updates, we have a live blog for you, kind of minute by minute of everything that's going on that we are able to confirm for you. The big takeaway, just to recap all of this, is that we are waiting to find out the conditions of these 2 officers. We know 2 officers were shot just after 11:30 this morning, and that prompted a massive police response to this area along Waldrop Cove. The Waldrop Cove apartment complex, actually in Decatur. You might recognize it mostly as the Panthersville neighborhood, but you can see several residents that are now either on the phone. We saw them standing outside kind of looking in the direction of some of this crime scene tape. We also saw DeKalb County police and a canine officer that was patrolling the wooded area just beyond that yellow police tape line. I'm going to bring First Alert Chopper full for you. This wooded area, working to learn whether this has any part of the investigation, as we saw a canine officer kind of moving through that with several officers following behind. Then we saw some armed investigators standing with their backs to the apartment building, facing that wooded area, just on patrol. So we are still working to learn really what exactly happened here and where in their investigation they are right now, whether that wooded area had any connection. It seems to be this far left apartment building of this complex that is the center of the investigation. And all of those black cars that you see, that is DeKalb County Police, that is crime scene investigator units, the several other authorities that have been called to respond to this. All the while, we are still monitoring our outside of Grady Hospital, our Atlanta News First reporter, Adam Murphy, waiting to find out when we can expect that news conference where some of those details will come out, and some of those questions hopefully we can get answers on. Again, that news conference expected to come at 1:45. Now I can tell you that we've been giving a timeline from DeKalb County Police. 1:45, they have tentatively scheduled that news conference. That can always change, but right now we will aim to bring you live coverage of remarks at 1:45. It's currently 1:05 p.m., so a little ways out, and I do believe we're losing our first alert chopper shot here. But taking you on the ground, this is our Atlanta News First crew just outside of the Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur. You can see some community members, police lights off to the far right side, and just beyond the scope of this viewpoint is really where you can see the extent of how many officers are responding to this, and kind of follow along the investigation. We're trying to kind of be respectful that there is an active police investigation underway and not show you too much, but at the same time trying to get as many answers to impacted community residents, to those of you watching here today while we wait for that 1:45 news conference at Grady Hospital. And still following along some of the developments that we're working to learn. I see Shay Wright asking, I want to know why they were called. Shay, I believe you're asking about the police response. So what we do know is there was an initial response to this apartment complex. At 11:32 is when dispatch called that shots were fired and officers were hurt. That is what prompted DeKalb County Police to show up in mass like this, and then several other units to follow. We typically see that being the case when an officer is injured, an officer is involved in a shooting in any way, that we see this type of response. But now we do know that those two officers have been taken to Grady Hospital. We have a crew on the ground at Grady, and we are expecting to get more information about their conditions and some of the details of this investigation at 1:45. So in a little bit of time, about a little over half an hour, we'll be taking you live right here on Atlanta News First Plus to those remarks and answering hopefully some of those questions. But for the officers that are still in this area, this live picture that you're looking at, Waldrop Cove apartment complex in Decatur, our team just taking you wide a little bit so you can see how many units are still on scene. This is where they're working to piece together that initial investigation and the one involving the officer. It's kind of two investigations being worked on at once right now is what we can assume. But still several units on scene assisting with that, crime scene investigators, not just DeKalb County Police, and then several more here at Grady Hospital. I am monitoring that Grady Hospital shot. I can show it to you guys. There's not a whole lot of activity, but we do know there are still officers that are on scene, and kind of also waiting to learn about the conditions of their fellow officer and kind of working to learn where they can assist in this. But it is quite a waiting game when you're talking about two officers that were shot now receiving treatment. It's just everyone's waiting to learn their condition and really where they're at with those injuries. So that's the Grady Hospital shot just outside of this viewpoint. You can start to see some more officers that are in the vicinity, and that press conference at 1:45, that's where we're going to get the bulk of the details that we're still working to answer. Again, still in communication with some of those units that are responding in the Waldrop Cove apartment complex area of Decatur, and then working to learn more from Grady staff, from some of the investigators on the conditions of those officers. Really important information for you there. And again, just stepping away, I had to talk to our Atlanta News First reporter on the ground to your left-hand side of the scene here at Waldrop Cove apartment complex, Yasmina Alston. She's going to get on with us to kind of fill us in on what she's learning right now and kind of get a better understanding of what's going on out there, all the while monitoring for that 1:45 news conference at Grady Hospital.
Hi, what REM do I need to call into?
All right, and taking you back out live here, popping on camera for a moment for you guys. Grady Hospital. This is where our Atlanta News First reporter Adam Murphy is at. Again, waiting for that 1:45 news conference to be held. That time they told us was tentative, but they're going to try to get as much details for us then as possible while this investigation is still very much underway. I also want to take you back out live here to the actual scene at Waldrop Cove apartment complex, where we are about to hear momentarily, hopefully get in contact with our reporter on the ground, Yasmina Alston. She's been talking to community members, some of the officers that are responding to this. Not a whole lot of information coming from officers as this investigation, we imagine, still in its early stages. Again, this all stemming from an 11:30 call by dispatch notifying officers that two DeKalb County police men were shot, police officers were shot, and again, now that leading to a massive police response to this area along Waldrop Cove apartment complex. And I do believe we are going to be talking with our Yasmina Alston here in a moment, but just to get you back to that Grady Hospital kind of ground shot. This is also live for you while she's getting set up. Two things are happening here. Right now, we are still following out of Decatur some of the police response that we're seeing. We are also at Grady waiting to learn an update on the conditions of these two officers. And again, still not a whole lot of information coming from police, coming from these investigators that are responding. But we have had a chance to talk to some of the community members. I want to bring on our Atlanta News First, Yasmina Alston, here in a moment to talk a little bit about what we've heard from community members. And Yasmina, let me know if you can hear me, because we are live and this desk is finicky.
I can hear you.
All right. Hey, moments ago, we know you spoke with some of the community members in this area. We were able to take some of that live here on ANF Plus. What can you tell us from some of the chatter you've been hearing?
Well, Maria, like you've mentioned already, this is a very residential community. There are a lot of apartment homes here where this scene is happening. And we did have the chance, like you mentioned, to speak with one resident who says she left to go to the store briefly. And when she returned, she realized that her road to get to her home was blocked off, obviously, by the large police presence that you're seeing right now. She had no idea what was going on. We did, tell her that we had it confirmed that two officers were shot here at this apartment complex. We did not know exactly what led up to that, and she was surprised to hear about the two officers being shot, and also finding out that she was not able to get to her home at this time either. Her reaction to finding out, when we told her what happened, she said it was shocking to hear. She said in her 5 years of living at this complex, nothing like this has ever happened before. She's never seen a police presence like what we're seeing here. And you can see even still now, hours later, this part of the complex is still blocked off by the police presence. We've got the CSI van here now, of course, DeKalb County Police. We've seen the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office as well. We've seen canines on the property walking around in a wooded area closer to the back of the complex, which we haven't been able to see, but you have had that vantage point from our chopper shot at least. But a lot of residents are now waiting to see if they can get back to their homes, and of course waiting for more details as to what exactly happened here.
And Yasmina, earlier our First Alert chopper captured video of a man being taken into custody. Any word from these investigators, whether you've been able to talk with them about a suspect in this or what that man's connection possibly was?
At this point in time, unfortunately, we have not been able to get any information from any of the officials here on scene. I do believe within the next 20 minutes or so, there will be an update from officials at Grady Hospital where our Adam Murphy is. So hopefully we'll learn more information about who that was and their connection to what happened here. So again, still a lot of questions that we need answers to, but what we do know here at the scene is there is a very large police presence. You can see some officials over here to the right side walking back into the wooded area behind this apartment building. You can now also see some residents who have come outside of their homes and are walking towards this way. So we do believe that they are letting some residents go to their homes or leave their homes if they need to.
Yeah, a lot of questions still remaining unanswered. Yasmina, I know you're working to piece some of this together and join us here on Atlanta News First News starting at the 3 o'clock hour. I just want to ask, you standing there and knowing that 2 officers have been shot while these officers try to conduct an investigation involving one of their own. I mean, what's the feeling in the air?
I think the feeling from a lot of the residents here is confusion and concern. They're wanting to know, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And who was involved? And then, of course, also concern for those officers who were impacted. We, of course, are still, waiting to learn more about their condition and how exactly they're doing. So a lot of those unanswered questions that we have will hopefully be answered during that later press conference.
I appreciate you. We are going to stay on top of this, taking your live camera here of the scene, but I really appreciate you joining us and kind of just offering that perspective. All right, and guys, just staying with this picture right here, Waldrop Cove apartment complex. We again are following two different shots for you here. Our Adam Murphy outside of Grady Hospital. We'll try to see if we can chat with him as well. But we are waiting for a 1:45 news conference where hopefully, as Yasmina was saying, some of these details we can learn more about. The big one is the condition of these officers that were taken to Grady Hospital. We know the 2 officers were shot. Our sources tell us, and those officers were taken to Grady, where you can see right here. Now outside of Grady at 1:45 is where we are expecting to hear official update. And just taking this Grady picture full for you while our crew moves around. This is really what the next step of where we'll get some of our information. A couple of you asking more about the suspect. No word right now on whether a suspect has been taken into custody. What we do know is our First Alert chopper captured earlier here. I'm going to take this live bug down just to not cause any confusion for you. We captured 3 officers with the DeKalb County Police Department taking a man wearing a white shirt with his hands cuffed behind his back inside this vehicle. Now, the reason we can't speculate on what his connection might be to this investigation is because we haven't received word from officials on what that arrest is relating to. So hopefully we can get you some of those questions answered in that 1:45 scheduled news conference. But what we can tell you is that our First Alert chopper captured police escorting a man behind into the back of a DeKalb County police vehicle, that vehicle leaving the scene. So again, working to learn the officers, their conditions, what they were initially responding to, and of course, whether a suspect has been taken to custody and possibly that connection involving the man we saw on First Alert Chopper. Hopping back on here with you all, reading through some of your comments. If you have questions, I know some of you have been asking really good questions about the circumstances of this investigation, and we're still working to answer those. I just want to make sure you all know that we see all of your incoming messages, and we're working both in our newsroom and on the ground to get those answers for you. Our Atlanta News First, Adam Murphy, is going to be joining us here in a couple moments, live outside of Grady Hospital, where those two officers we've been told have been taken for treatment. Again, not a whole lot of information on the conditions of those officers, but we are awaiting a 1:45 news conference that will happen right outside of this building, outside of the hospital. As you can see, how many officers are kind of on standby, waiting to learn more about the conditions of those two injured police officers, and kind of here with us, just waiting to learn more. I do believe a car just drove in front of the camera. I'm going to take you back out to Waldrop Cove Apartments, where the actual investigation into this incident is underway. But you have several units in Decatur, several units outside of Grady Hospital. They're kind of on standby. We saw Doraville Police, DeKalb County Police, we saw crime scene investigators, and other units here kind of trying to assist as best as they can with an investigation of this magnitude. The actual news conference will come from DeKalb County Police. That is going to happen right here where we are taking this live picture, and our Adam Murphy is going to be joining us here in a moment to kind of talk about what he's seen, getting as close as possible to Grady Hospital, where you have several units that are kind of also kind of locked out, waiting to learn news about possibly, an officer that they are very close with. This is a department we're talking about where they work with each other every single day. And so when you hear about a colleague, a friend, one of your own that has been injured in this way in a shooting, responding to an apartment complex, you expect to see a massive kind of response within the department, outside of the hospital, waiting to learn whether those two officers are going to be okay. So we're going to try to get Adam on the phone here with us. I might step away here for a moment, and hopefully I'm just going to take you back out to Waldrop Cove Apartment Complex. Once we hear from him, we can kind of chat and answer some more of your questions. Again, all of us waiting to learn more out of that 1:45 news conference that is scheduled in the next 20 minutes and get some of those details answered. And I want to now bring on our Atlanta News First reporter, Adam Murphy. Adam, we're live right now, so let me know if you can hear me. I'm doing this test live. Okay, and we can hear you. I know that we're all on standby for this 1:45 news conference. What can you tell us just from being kind of outside of Grady Hospital, where we're learning that those 2 officers are now receiving treatment?
Well, first I can tell you that our camera was here when the ambulance bringing these 2 officers to the hospital came in. In fact, that ambulance was led by a couple of police cars with DeKalb County Police, so they actually led the way for this ambulance to arrive here at the emergency room at Grady. Now, at this point in time, we have very little information. We are hearing there were 2 officers that were shot in the line of duty. We don't know anything about them at this point in time. We do expect to learn more information. As you mentioned, at 1:45, we had the public information officer, Officer Wells, with the DeKalb County Police come out and inform us that they would have some new information coming down at 1:45, so we're a little less than 30 minutes or so from that, and we should learn a lot more at that point in time. We have seen a number of other DeKalb County police officers making their way into the hospital. This is not uncommon. When an officer is shot in the line of duty, you will see a number of other officers make their way. In fact, here's one of the DeKalb County Police patrol cars leaving right now, but many of the officers have come to check on the status of their other officers that they work with and care about. And so we hope to learn a little bit more here very soon, but at this point in time, we haven't really gotten any new information other than the fact that we know they were brought here. Grady, obviously being the #1 trauma hospital in the Southeast, so when someone like an officer is shot in the line of duty, this is where they come, Maria.
And we were able to see, off of your camera, being live here on Atlanta News First Plus, the different types of officers that you mentioned. We see Doraville Police there, DeKalb Police. Have you had a chance to kind of talk to them about some of the emotions that they're going through? Everybody, expects to come into work and respond as an officer to the community, but ahead of the holidays, to hear that 2 of your own were shot, it is a little hard to kind of process.
I haven't had the opportunity yet to speak to any of these officers that are coming and going. In fact, they've kind of kept a distance between the media where we are stationed and where they are coming in on the other side of this sidewalk behind us. In fact, over in this corner right here, we have some security and some officers. Look like they might be with Atlanta Police. They are keeping us at distance so the vehicles can come through here, so that the officers can come through here, obviously to check on their other officers that were shot in the line of duty and do that peacefully. Now, what I will tell you, in my 20+ years of covering news stories and incidents similar to this throughout the Atlanta area, law enforcement, you've heard it before, they are a brotherhood, they are a sisterhood, they work so closely together, and so oftentimes you'll even see other agencies that will show up when someone has been hurt or injured in the line of duty, and we haven't noticed any other agencies at this point in time. So we don't really know what that means. It's really hard to speculate the condition of these officers at this point in time. Well, we're certainly hopeful that they're going to make a recovery. And again, 1:45, that's when we'll learn a lot more information. So don't go anywhere. If you want to know what the very latest is on this developing story, be sure to keep it locked in right here, because we will carry that news briefing live at that time at 1:45 on ANF+.
I really appreciate your perspective and humanity, Adam. We're going to take everybody back out live to the actual scene here in Decatur, where you can see several more units now having to conduct that investigation. DeKalb County Police on scene. Several units, crime scene investigators that we saw kind of patrolling this area, the wooded part of this apartment complex. At some point, they brought out a canine to kind of survey that area, and then we saw some more armed officers kind of face towards it, almost patrolling it in a way. I'm just changing my graphic here, guys. Sorry about that. But this is the viewpoint that we have been able to get you. This is as close as they're going to let us to that crime scene tape, and it just to show you how many officers are still on scene assisting with this investigation, while others remain outside of Grady Hospital on standby, as Adam said, waiting to learn whether their colleague is going to be okay. So they are going to be learning with us at that 1:45 news conference. We are now about 14 minutes away. Hopefully we can get some more information as our Atlanta News First team on the ground, both at the scene and outside of the hospital. I'm going to leave these side-by-side shots up for you while I step away, see if I can get any additional information for you. At 1:45, we're going to stay live right here, bring you those remarks in full, and kind of take you through the timeline that we have been able to piece together right now, because I know some of you are jumping in. All we know is that at 11:30, dispatch notified officers, or police, I should say, that 2 of their officers had been shot. We do know that that led to a massive police response in this area of Decatur, and it's not really anywhere that would be impacting a heavy amount of traffic or a large community, but it is a heavily populated residential space. So you can imagine from what we've been showing you, some of the community members that have been kind of looking on and trying to better understand what exactly is happening and why their home ahead of the holidays is now wrapped in police tape. So you can imagine just kind of the safety aspect for those community members to have that level of police presence in their community. It's got to be a little jarring ahead of the holidays. There's also the other side of the 2 officers that were shot and have now been transported to Grady Hospital, we're told, for treatment. There's still a lot to be unraveled on what exactly led up to that shooting and what their conditions are at the hospital. So we're going to stay on top of this and get you some more answers, hopefully, as this news conference unfolds and as our team works to get you more information both on the ground and in our newsroom here on Atlanta News First Plus. I really appreciate all of you kind of rolling with us here. This is very much live, so we're learning with you and we're kind of observing with you, and we want to make sure that we're taking you to the new information as quickly as possible. This is our best way to do that for you. So we'll leave these shots up, these side-by-side shots up for you. Again, on the left-hand side, the investigation out at this Decatur apartment complex where you have CSI, you have DeKalb County Police, Doraville Police, several other units that are now assisting with this. And then to your right, Grady Hospital, as close as we can get you to kind of see what the situation is there. What we can make out is how many officers are on standby waiting to learn the condition of those 2 injured officers, and of course the 1:45 news conference that will bring you live here in about 10 minutes on Atlanta News First Plus. So keep it right here.
We can back up. Yeah, we can't be over there. We're not supposed to be over there. It becomes a problem. Plus, they're not going to come past that car.
Well, if someone's standing here, we got traffic.
Let's fall back.
For questions, and then that's all the time that we have. Okay? I'm trying to find a better spot for this interview because I don't like this traffic right now.
We can't go over there.
Yeah.
I think you just got to block the traffic. Hey, Chris, we're about to do a concert with the sheriff and that's probably not going to block it.
All right, just toggling with our audio, toggling with our audio for a moment there. As you can see, we're just waiting for DeKalb County officials to cross the street here, and this news conference expected to get underway. We have the Public Information Officer, DeKalb CEO Michael Thurmond, and members of the DeKalb County Police Department that we are expecting to hear remarks from, making up this group that you see here before you. Once they do give remarks, we're going to take you through the entire timeline of what we know and what we don't know, so you have a better organization of all of the information. And of course, we're putting this out for you in the free Atlanta News First app, in a live blog of kind of the developments and the timeline of what we've been learning. We do still have a crew on the ground at the Decatur complex that we were speaking with our Atlanta News First reporter, Yasmina Alston, moments ago, talking about how these community members that are in this area, seeing this large police presence, seeing crime scene tape and an investigation ongoing right before the holidays, you know, having their own feelings and confusion as information remains limited. So a lot of folks waiting to learn the conditions of the officers and more information about the shooting investigation. Let's take you live now to those remarks from CEO Michael Thurmond.
And Chief of Police for DeKalb County Police Department, Martha C.
Hey,
Ramos.
Dwayne, how you doing?
So sorry.
All right, good afternoon. First of all, we are thankful that two of our officers who were wounded in the line of duty, from early indications, there will be a full recovery. And we thank God for their safety, and most importantly, we thank God for their service. I'm so proud of Chief Ramos and the men and women in uniform here in DeKalb County who do an exceptional job every day protecting nearly 800,000 residents. We're going to continue to pray for them, their families, and for our brothers and sisters in uniform. And the commitment is to continue to support them as they put their lives on the line to keep us safe. So right now I want to introduce Chief Martha Ramos that will provide you details about the two officers as well as whatever information that we can share at this time about the incident that led up to their shooting. So without further ado, Chief Ramos.
So this morning at approximately 11:12 a.m., 911 received an open line call. What that meant is there's no one else on the other line, but we could hear arguing in the background. Two officers were dispatched to the residence where they encountered the suspect's mother, who advised that her 20-year-old son was behaving aggressively in the home and causing a dispute with her and someone else in the apartment. The officers were directed to the apartment, at which time when they approached the bedroom door, the subject through the door fired several shots at the officers. Both officers were struck in the lower proximities of their body. Both are stable. They're currently being treated in the hospital behind us, and we are hoping that they're going to be okay. At this moment, they're conscious and they're alert. And one thing I would like to point out is that after one of the officers was shot, he still pursued the subject. He took him into custody with the help of the other officers that were coming on scene, which just demonstrates the bravery that our officers need to display every day. So the fact that he was able to continue going while he was still shot in the leg was very impressive, and we're very proud of all of our officers here today.
Chief, we saw one ambulance come through. Were both officers in that ambulance? And when you say the lower parts of the body, you said one was shot in the leg. Can you tell us where the other one was shot?
One was shot on the foot, and only one officer was brought in by ambulance. The other officer was brought in by a peer. So we put him in the back of one of our patrol cars and brought him in just to make sure that he got the service that he needs. And yes, he's in the hospital as well.
Can you tell us about the suspect?
The suspect is a 20-year-old male. He is currently in custody, and we're interviewing him as we speak.
Had you had any dealings with him before? It sounds like this was a domestic, right?
Yes. We don't know. At this time, we're still investigating. We're still even waiting on the search warrant so that we can search the home, find the weapons, and get additional information at this time. We just wanted to provide an update on the status of the officers.
Anyone else in the house? Whether or not that suspect had any mental health problems? Did she say why he was being arrested?
No, she did not, and we're still investigating that. This investigation is still very fluid. As I said, we have not even entered the home yet. We had to retreat, get a search warrant so we can do a good search. And so we are just piecing all the pieces together now.
Was anyone else at home? Did somebody else get hurt?
The suspect is being interviewed at this time.
Was anyone else at home? Did anyone else get hurt?
No one else was injured. Only our officers were injured. And I say only because even though we understand that's part of our job, we're not really expecting to come into work and not make it home in one piece. So Thanksgiving, it's a time to be grateful and blessed. And we are grateful and blessed today that our officers will be able to spend Thanksgiving with their families.
Can you talk a little bit about the officers? Can you tell us about how long they've been with the force and things like that about the officers?
We'll provide that information in an email, but I will tell you that it's one supervisor. His name is Sergeant Matthews, and there's a female officer, and her name is Officer Howe. We will get some data together, and we will provide you that information when we have it.
How can you spell it?
Howell.
You said one of your officers was shot and they continued to pursue the subject.
Yes.
Who was that and what did they do? Were they able to just go up and bring the subject down to the ground, or tell me a little bit about what effort they made to bring this subject into, police custody?
I don't have all of the details. I know that he was able to pursue him, and as the officers were coming in, he was able to take him into custody. What that entails, I don't know the specifics. But I do know that he could have just stood there and waited, but he did not. He went in pursuit of the subject and was able to get him into custody.
Why were officers searching through the woods? We saw some officers in the woods for some reason. Was there some sort of chase?
They were looking to see if we could find the firearm, which we have yet to locate, but we are still trying to. For all we know, it's in the home. As I said, we haven't even made it into the home to do a thorough search. We're doing everything by the letter, so we'll be waiting for the search warrant before we go in and investigate any further. So at this time, I don't really have anything additional. Just wanted to make sure that we shared with you the status of the officers. The investigation is ongoing, and we will provide more updates as we receive them.
Chief, about the officer, do you expect them to be discharged today?
They will be staying in the hospital for observation.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about how dangerous these kind of phone calls, these kind of 911 calls are, like domestic calls, or even you said it was an open line call, but just how dangerous these kind of phone calls are when police officers have to go and respond?
A domestic call is one of our most dangerous phone calls, but realistically, the moment you put this uniform on, it is dangerous. We don't know what the day is going to entail. You could be having lunch and be confronted by a subject. So every day is unpredictable for us. So we consider every day a dangerous day for law enforcement. And we're just glad that law enforcement were the winners today.
Chief, one question about the pursuit. When you said the officer pursued the suspect, where did that pursuit take place and where did they go?
So all of that is still under investigation, but as I said, he jumped out of the back window, and so he gave pursuit, and because of that, we were able to locate him and take him into custody. The details of that are still under investigation.
Are you releasing how many shots were fired? When you say shot through the door, one officer shot in the foot, the other in
We will release that information once we get in, do the search warrant, do a good and detailed investigation. We will provide that information, ma'am.
Can you be specific now and tell us which officer was shot in the foot and which one was shot in the leg?
Officer Howell was shot in the foot, and Sergeant Matthews, I believe, was shot in the leg, maybe upper hip area. So as you're saying, we're waiting for them to get treated. We don't know all the specifics. This happened, about 2 hours ago, so it's still unfolding. I think the thing we want to focus on today is that the bad guy is in jail, well, will be in jail, and that our 2 officers are stable, and we're ecstatic that they're going to be able to hopefully go home tomorrow and be with their families for Thanksgiving like the rest of us. Thank you. I will provide all of that information as we get it. We will provide a detailed email forthcoming.
Chief, you talked about how grateful you are that the officers are alive. Can you give us some little insight into how you felt when you learned your officers were going to be okay?
Well, I will tell you that before I learned that they were going to be okay, I was already in the car. The moment that you hear an officer has been injured in any capacity, our hearts drop and we get in the car and we just go. We don't need to know the details. Right now we had a whole bunch of officers in there, so we had to work at getting them out because we don't want to interfere with the process of the hospital, but we want to make sure that we're there because our officers, first and foremost, need to know that they are never alone. I have received many phone calls from other police departments. Governor Kemp himself has called, checking in on the officers. That is the kind of support that law enforcement needs so that they can do their job and do it well. Thank you so much.
CEO Thurman, do you want to say anything about the response from Grady, how they were able to respond to this kind of emergency?
We are so delighted and thrilled and thankful for the extreme level of professionalism and care that has been and is being provided by Grady, by the emergency response team who transported one of our officers. I can't say enough about the DeKalb County men and women in uniform, but I ask you all and everyone who might hear about this story tomorrow at Thanksgiving, out of all the things we can be thankful for, let's be thankful for the men and women in uniform all across this county, all across this state, all across this nation who keep us safe. They are literally putting their lives on the line for us. So let us be thankful for all the bounty that we have. And one of those are these brave men and women in uniform who are standing behind me today. Thank y'all so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so you just heard from DeKalb County Police Department CEO Michael Thurman, the chief of police, giving us really a more detailed timeline and an update on these officers. The big news that I wanted to share with you that we just heard from the chief was that those 2 officers, Sergeant Matthews and Officer Howell, they are recovering right now. They were told they're stable. Sergeant Matthews, was shot in the leg, we were told in this news conference. Officer Howell was shot in the foot. This is a male and female officer that were responding at 11:12 to what was an open line, and as the chief explained, meaning there wasn't any communication from the 911 caller, but they could hear on the 911 call at 11:12 that there was arguing and some sort of domestic dispute going on. Those 2 officers, Sergeant Matthews and Officer Howell, responded, and at 11:32 is when dispatch notified units that 2 officers had been shot, and we saw that massive police response. Now, the other parts of this that we learned was when Sergeant Matthews and Officer Howell arrived, they met with the suspect, as the chief had outlined for us, and the suspect then threw the door at them, at which point the suspect, in the words of DeKalb County Police, fired at the officers. Sergeant Matthews struck in the leg, pursued that suspect, went after that individual who has been described as a 20-year-old man, and was able to kind of confront him. Now, we do know that the suspect did jump out of the back window of that apartment unit, and that is when other officers who were responding to reports of those shots being fired were able to confront him. Now, earlier on at First Alert Chopper, I'm going to bring my live bug down just to avoid any confusion. We did see here from First Alert Chopper a man being taken in handcuffs into the back of this DeKalb County police vehicle. Still no word on whether this was the suspect. I just don't want to speculate. What we do know is the suspect has been identified as a 20-year-old man, and he was arrested shortly after 11:32. Now, we are still following a heavy police presence in the area of that Decatur apartment complex. As we learned from this news conference just moments ago, that there is still a long ways to go with this investigation. We do know that they are waiting for, DeKalb police is waiting for a search warrant to enter the home. They said they haven't located the firearm that was used in the shooting involving the officers. At this time, the chief said that it could very well be inside of the home, but that is why they were searching the perimeter earlier at some point during this live stream. We kind of saw a canine officer sniffing through the wooded area. We saw several units following behind in the bushes, imagining they are still locating, based on that information, evidence pertaining to this investigation. But we do know at this time that the firearm has not been located, and that DeKalb County Police and other investigators waiting for a search warrant to return so that they can enter the home and conduct an investigation from within. So still a ways to go at this scene out in DeKalb County. Again, this residential community, a couple businesses in the area of the Waldrop Cove apartment complex, just ahead of the holidays. Really a lot of concern we saw in the faces of community members in this area who were onlooking. You could see the heavy police presence, could see the crime scene tape, and we're kind of learning more about what was unfolding here just from talking to each other and kind of observing themselves, but not a whole lot of information coming from investigators on the scene. We did hear in this news conference as well that the suspect is currently being questioned by investigators, and that the two officers are going to be held for observation. Now, the big takeaway here is those two officers are going to be are in stable condition, we were told, and as the chief said, are hopefully going to be home with their families once they are released from the hospital. But again, Sergeant Matthews suffering an injury to the leg, and Officer Howell shot in the foot. So our thoughts go out to them as we monitor their conditions and their recovery process. We are going to continue to follow this. Again, a lot of questions still remain around that initial response to the domestic dispute at 11:12 and who this suspect was. So that as that all comes out later in this investigation, we are going to bring that to you live right here on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus.